They didn't just sell you a fantasy, they etched it into your psyche before you even knew what desire was. Not through sermons or textbooks, but through every bedtime story that ended with a kiss, every broken man on screen who was magically saved by a woman's gaze, every lyric that told you she would be your home. They carved it into your bones with lullabies, with glances your father never explained, with fairy tales that made suffering look romantic if it ended in her arms. They told you that love would come for you like a divine rescue, flawless, redemptive, unconditional. That somewhere out there, a woman existed not just to love you, but to complete you. That her touch would be holy, her eyes would recognize the shattered boy in you, and that she would fix what life fractured before you could even name the pain. And you didn't just believe it, you needed to, because the alternative, that no one is coming, that no one was ever coming, was too brutal to face. You didn't fall for a lie. You were raised inside one. It shaped your longings, your worth, your definition of what it means to be whole. You thought you were dreaming of her, but you were dreaming of salvation, of being seen, finally, without having to explain the ache you've carried since childhood. You mistook rescue for romance, therapy for intimacy, healing for affection. And now, that myth owns you. Because if love isn't the rescue you were promised, then what is it? And who are you without that dream to chase? But what if the myth was never truth to begin with? What if it was merely comfort, dressed up in the illusion of clarity, sold to you as certainty because the raw truth was too terrifying to name? What if everything you've ever labeled as love was never about being found or healed, but about escaping yourself? A clever disguise for avoidance, a trade, your pain for a fantasy, your wounds for a mirror that only reflects who you wish you were, not who you actually are. What if what you've longed for wasn't love, but anesthesia? Not a connection, but a distraction with lipstick and laughter. And what if this deception wasn't modern? What if it predates your heartbreaks, your memories, even your first crush? What if the roots of it sink deep into your unconscious, so deep that you never knew it wasn't your voice craving her, but the echo of centuries of inherited yearning? Long before your mother warned you of heartbreak, before anyone gave you advice about women, nature, yes, the philosopher they told you was dangerous, had already torn this illusion apart with surgical precision. He saw it for what it was, not love, but a beautiful lie, a shadow wrapped in silk, a mass hallucination we've all been trained to chase. He didn't just question the myth, he exposed it. Not to destroy love, but to burn away the illusion that it was ever supposed to save you. Nature didn't write to soothe you to sleep. He wasn't crafting lullabies. He was swinging a hammer meant to break bones, not just beliefs. His words weren't made for comfort. They were designed to wound, to awaken. He didn't polish reality to make it pretty. He cracked it open to show you the blood beneath. And one of the grandest illusions he took aim at was the myth of romantic purity, the sacred fiction that love exists untouched by power, that desire is gentle, that affection is always born from virtue. He exposed the rot beneath the poetry, the fantasy that women are instinctively soft and nurturing, and men are innocent wanderers, forever chasing the warmth they were denied. He understood that this wasn't a sweet misunderstanding, it was a trap. A beautiful cage built from culture, media, and morality. A story that didn't just lull men, it pacified them. It shaped them into eager seekers, not of truth, but of comfort. Men were trained to believe that emotional submission was virtue, that pleasing was purpose, that being chosen was salvation. Not because women demanded obedience, but because men were conditioned to offer it up without being asked, to mistake validation for connection and obedience for intimacy. And in that self-betrayal, they'd lost something sacred, their rawness, their rage, their inner wilderness. Nature saw this and chose to provoke, not placate. He didn't want men to feel safe. He wanted them to feel awake. And here lies the fracture most refuse to face, the splintered truth buried beneath all the poetry and promises. You don't love her. Not really. You love the mirror she unknowingly holds up, the one that reflects the man you desperately wish you were. It's not her eyes you're addicted to. It's the way they look at you when you feel like someone worth being. Her presence doesn't just comfort you, it justifies you. It becomes your evidence that you matter, that you're enough, that maybe, just maybe, you're finally healed. But this isn't love. Look closer. Strip the fantasy bare. What you're calling love is a transaction dressed in sentiment. It's a subtle performance, a silent plea. You're not saying, "I see you." You're saying, "See me." You're not asking for partnership. You're bargaining for identity. You place your soul on the table like a sacrificial offering, whispering beneath your breath, "Will you complete me if I erase myself for you? Will you make me real if I give you all that's left of me?" And that right there is the most dangerous illusion of all. Not that she deceived you, but that you willingly disappeared, hoping she'd find someone in the ashes to love. But what if her softness isn't a refuge at all? What if it's a strategy, a calculated grace honed through years of being dismissed, overlooked, and rendered invisible? What if that tenderness you mistake for purity is nothing but a weapon, carefully wielded, not out of malice, but out of survival? Because while men were out conquering empires and writing history, women were quietly learning how to navigate spaces where their voices were optional, their needs secondary. Yet in the shadows, they held an undeniable power. They didn't have authority handed to them, so they learned how to command without it. They weren't gifted the right to dominate, so they mastered the art of influence. It wasn't about manipulation. It was evolution. An adaptation forged by the necessity of existing in a world that never saw them as equals. What you think of as her sweetness, it's not naivety. It's finesse. She's not waiting for your approval. She's waiting for you to realize that the room has always been hers, even if she's never had to say it aloud. And here we are, in what you call the modern age, and you're still making the same mistake. You're still confusing adaptation with fragility. You see her silence and think it's weakness, her stillness and think it's submission. You mistake her quiet for compliance and her restraint for a lack of passion. You think every glance she gives you is a declaration of devotion, that her attentiveness is a sign of loyalty. But here's the twist you failed to see. She isn't simply reacting. She's observing. Every word you say, every gesture you make, every slight shift in your body language. It's all being cataloged, processed, analyzed. Her silence? It's not passivity. It's a sharpness that you don't recognize. Her ability to remain still, to remain composed in moments of chaos, is not a reflection of weakness. It's the power of emotional intelligence. She reads you, not with a naive lens of affection, but through a lens shaped by necessity. Every word you speak, every move you make, becomes a piece in the puzzle she's solving. You think she's just empathic. No, she's calculating, and her empathy isn't a mere emotional response. It's a strategic tool. She doesn't just understand emotions. She understands how to use them to navigate the terrain of a world that's always demanded more from her than it ever gave. For her, emotional intelligence is survival. It's a skill forged by the generations before her who had to adapt, not out of choice, but because the consequences of failing to read the room were too great. Her ability to stay calm, to read between your words and actions, to know when to speak and when to remain silent. It's not instinct, it's wisdom. And you've never even seen it coming. While you stand there, exposing your deepest emotions, thinking that vulnerability is the key to intimacy, she's not entranced by your openness. She's studying you. Every word, every pause, every subtle shift in your voice. It's all part of her process. She's not taking notes to exploit you, not out of malice, but to understand the full terrain of your mind. Your fears become markers, your ambitions the waypoints, your weaknesses the cracks she steps around. It's not about breaking you down, but understanding how to be irreplaceable in your life. She's not after power. She's positioning herself strategically, meticulously placing herself exactly where she knows she can't be easily dismissed. She doesn't need to manipulate. She's just mastering the art of presence, of knowing when to step forward and when to stand back, how to support you while never losing her grip on the situation. It's not an act of cruelty, but of precision. It's not a game of control, but of careful choreography. And you're moving to the rhythm, caught in a dance you don't even know you're part of. Every step you take, every emotion you reveal, it's all part of a grand design that unfolds with effortless grace, while you remain blissfully unaware of the hidden structure guiding it all. She doesn't dominate with words, with loud commands or brash authority. No, her influence is subtler, almost imperceptible to the untrained eye. She doesn't force, she suggests, gently planting ideas, nudging your perspective just enough to create a shift. She doesn't assert herself as the leader. Instead, she aligns herself with you, seamlessly becoming a part of your environment, your thoughts, your life. And before you know it, you're moving to a rhythm you never consciously chose. Your thoughts begin to echo hers, your actions in sync with the pace she's set. You start measuring your decisions, your responses, your very desires against her silence, the absence of words that speaks volumes. You tell yourself it's connection, that the bond is mutual, organic. But in reality, what you're experiencing isn't connection. It's something far more intricate. It's design. It's architecture. Emotional, social, psychological architecture. And it's been carefully constructed in a world that, for generations, taught women to thrive without ever appearing to lead. In this space, leadership isn't about the overt exercise of power. It's about creating a space where influence is felt rather than seen, where strength is woven into every gesture, every glance, and every unspoken moment. You've fallen into it, and it feels natural because she's never asked for control. She's simply designed a landscape in which you've chosen to move. And still, you cling to the hope that this time, it's different. This time, she is the exception. The love, you tell yourself, is pure, untainted by the patterns you've seen before. She's not playing a role. She's not just another part in the script you've been following all your life. But how can you truly know? How could you possibly be sure? Because you've never dared to question the very script you've internalized. The one that insists she is the healer, the redeemer, the reward at the end of your suffering. You handed her the pen without even realizing it, asking her to write your value, to define your worth, to fill the empty spaces you've been too afraid to face. You gave her the power to make you feel complete, but the moment she stops writing your validation, you crumble. The walls you've built around her, the expectations, the fantasies, they begin to fall apart. You call her cold, distant, unfeeling. But what if, just what if, she isn't cold at all? What if she simply stepped out of the role you forced her into? What if she finally stopped pretending to be the savior, the perfect answer to all your longing? Now you feel abandoned, lost, shattered, not because she left, but because the entire image you carefully constructed around her, the one that kept you tethered to your own insecurities, simply dissolved. You weren't abandoned by her presence, but by the illusion you created to avoid facing yourself. Nature saw all of this with a clarity that cut through the noise. Not to vilify women, not to demonize them, but to force a hard reflection upon men. Men who romanticize submission and confuse it for love. Men who place femininity on an unreachable pedestal, mistaking reverence for nobility, when in reality, it's just another form of idealization. Men who, in their quest for comfort, surrender their power, their agency, and their autonomy, only to call it loyalty, as if giving up their identity for ease could ever truly be an act of devotion. And that mirror, that sharp reflection of their own vulnerabilities, their own weakness, still terrifies most. They would rather cling to the comfortable myth, the illusion of simplicity, than face the unsettling truth that nature, in all his philosophical rage, was trying to reveal. That mirror forces them to confront what they've given away in exchange for fleeting peace, and that reckoning, that cold, hard truth, is often too much to bear. Because here's the uncomfortable truth they refuse to face. You're not offering love. What you're really offering is yourself, like a sacrificial offering, hoping she will accept your devotion as proof that you are enough. It's not a selfless act. It's a desperate attempt to prove your worth, to make yourself visible in a world that has taught you that love is the currency of validation. You're not giving freely, from a place of abundance or genuine care. No, you're bargaining, selling pieces of your soul in exchange for her attention, her approval, her acceptance. You hold yourself out like an offering, hoping she'll see the sacrifice as proof that you're worthy of her affection, that you're not just a shadow in her world. And the troubling part is, she's not demanding this, at least not explicitly. But somewhere deep within you, you've been conditioned to believe that without her gaze upon you, without her validation, you don't exist. You don't have value. You're nothing. And so, you offer fragments of yourself, your time, your energy, your self-respect, believing this is the price of love, the price of belonging. But in doing so, you've distorted what love is. It's no longer a free exchange between equals. It becomes a transactional game, where your own worth is tied to her recognition of you. And the tragedy is, you never stop to question the nature of the transaction. You never ask if you're truly being loved, or if you've simply been convinced that this exchange is the only way you can feel seen, feel like you matter. But it's not love. It's a lie. A bargaining chip in a game where you're losing your sense of self, piece by piece, in hopes that she'll give you back the parts you've given away. That's not partnership. That's dependency. And somehow, you've convinced yourself it's romantic. This idea of giving everything to her, expecting that your devotion will be the glue that binds you together in eternal love. But while you're lost in the emotional haze of poetic gestures, empty promises, and sacrificial love, she's standing back, observing. Not out of malice or manipulation, but because she understands something you don't yet grasp. She's assessing, not exploiting. Every time you reveal your heart, expose your vulnerabilities, she's learning the intricate contours of your emotional landscape, mapping your deepest desires, your fears, and your needs. She doesn't do this out of cruelty or a desire to control, but because it's instinctive. She's been taught, through years of navigating a world that expects women to be everything to everyone, how to read a man. She understands the subtle art of emotional survival. And through her quiet observations, she knows where to lean in, when to pull away, how to create just enough distance to make you long for her presence without realizing she's the one controlling the pace. She knows when to show up at just the right moment, when to be distant enough to make you wonder if she's slipping away. And you, in your emotional dependency, mistake it for chemistry. You think it's some cosmic connection, the universe aligning to bring you together in perfect harmony. But it's not chemistry. It's calibration. It's precision. She's not getting swept away by passion. She's calculating the exact amount of emotional space she needs to take up to keep you hooked. And she's doing it with a kind of quiet mastery that you're too blind to see. It's not magic. It's strategy. You think she's nurturing you, pouring all her energy into caring for you, making you feel safe and seen. But what if that nurturing is just the surface of a much deeper game? What if, beneath the softness, she's actually crafting the experience, meticulously designing the emotional landscape you're walking through? Not because she's trying to deceive or manipulate, but because, in a world that has long taught her that power must be hidden to be protected, she's learned to move quietly, to assert herself without ever raising her voice. She's not trying to play a role, she's surviving. Every act of kindness, every gesture that feels like affection, is part of a deeper, unspoken strategy, an art form of control without the appearance of it. She's learned to become indispensable without ever appearing to take charge. The world never handed her authority in plain sight, so she found other ways to lead, to influence, to guide. And the most powerful way she could do that was through the quiet, almost imperceptible veil of care. It's not about being the center of attention. It's about being the force that holds everything together, unseen and unnoticed, until you can't imagine your life without her in it. She's not just nurturing you. She's building the world around you where you begin to believe that you need her to feel whole, to feel complete. And in doing so, she becomes indispensable, not through overt command, but through the quiet, steady creation of dependency. You don't see it, but every moment, every exchange, is carefully shaped to make sure you feel like you can't live without her. And you never question it, because it feels like love. But it's not love. It's survival, crafted with intention. You think love is about surrendering yourself completely, offering up your heart without reservation. You believe that to love is to give, to put yourself at her mercy, to allow your identity to dissolve in her presence. But she knows better. To her, love isn't about surrender. It's about leverage, the delicate balance of power that shifts and changes with every interaction. She doesn't need to demand control. She understands that the power lies in how you perceive yourself through her eyes. And when she pulls away, when her warmth withdraws, you feel a sudden, aching emptiness. It's not because she's physically absent. No, it's because something far deeper has vanished with her. Your reflection, the version of yourself you were allowed to be when she was around, has disappeared. You were never just existing, you were performing. The stage you built with her affection, the validation you sought in her gaze, is now quiet. And that silence, it feels like an existential void. It's not just about losing her, it's about the loss of your own identity. You realize, in the stillness, that your sense of self was never rooted in who you truly are, but in who you became in her presence. And now that she's gone, the mirror you relied on is shattered. For the first time, you see yourself clearly, not as the version she helped you create, but as you really are. And in that moment of brutal clarity, you recoil. The person staring back at you is unfamiliar, and the weight of that truth is almost unbearable, because deep down, you never wanted her love for what it truly was. You wanted it to be the mirror that reflected your worth, the lens that made you feel important. Without that, you're left to confront the unsettling reality of who you've become, and it feels like the death of a version of yourself that you thought was whole. Nietzsche wasn't cynical. He wasn't cruel. He was simply clear-eyed, seeing the world as it truly was, without the haze of romanticism or sentimental ideals. He understood that the real danger wasn't in women themselves, but in the illusions men built around them. The pedestal, that lofty platform where men place women to venerate them, isn't a place of true honor. No, it's a trap, a place of blindness, where perception is clouded by misplaced reverence. You see her not for who she truly is, but for the image you've projected onto her, the idealized version you've conjured from your desires and insecurities. As long as you keep her up there, out of reach, elevated in your mind to a divine status, you're not seeing her at all. You're seeing a reflection of your own hopes, your own fantasies, and your own need to worship something beyond yourself. And in doing so, you fail to recognize who she really is, the complexities, the strengths, the flaws that make her whole. But more than that, you fail to see who you truly are. Because while you're distracted by the image you've built of her, you neglect the reality of yourself, the parts of you that need confronting, the wounds that need healing, the strength that still lies dormant within. The pedestal makes you blind to both your own humanity and hers. It keeps you trapped in a cycle of illusions, where both of you are reduced to roles in a story that doesn't reflect the truth of either person. Because here's the cold, hard truth. She didn't deceive you. You deceived yourself. You created a script, a narrative where she was the star, the savior, the one who would complete you. You cast her in the role of your salvation, and every time she played it, you convinced yourself it was real. But when she stopped performing that role, when she began to show herself as she truly was, not as you wished her to be, you felt betrayed. Betrayed by her actions, but more so betrayed by the lie you had been living. That sense of betrayal, the sharp sting you feel, is the price of awakening. It's the toll you pay for peeling back the layers of illusion and confronting the truth. The story you built up, of love as rescue, of her as the missing piece to your fractured self, begins to crack and crumble. And now you're left with the wreckage of a fantasy that was never real. You believed in the story, the narrative you told yourself, not the person in front of you, not her authentic self. You didn't see her as she truly is. You saw her as a projection, a fulfillment of your own need to escape the discomfort of your own incompleteness. And now that the illusion is fading, the reality is glaring, and it's a bitter pill to swallow. And now you're standing in the space of discomfort, the thin, fragile divide between myth and reality. You're caught between what you once believed and what is unfolding before your eyes. And in this moment, you have a choice. You can retreat back into the comforting arms of the fantasy you've held onto for so long. Find another muse to project your desires onto, and repeat the same cycle of delusion. Or you can choose to wake up, to look at her, not as a savior sent to redeem your fractured soul, not as an angel who exists to heal your wounds, but as a strategist, a master of adaptation. You'll begin to see her not as someone to complete you, but as someone who has survived and thrived in a world that never handed her the tools of dominance. Instead, she learned to navigate its depths, to influence it from within, to shape the very dynamics of power without ever needing to wield it in the traditional sense. This isn't about blame or resentment. It's not about casting her as the villain of your story. It's about recognition, about stepping into a deeper understanding of how the world really works. This is what happens when you stop looking at love through the lens of fantasy and start seeing it with the clarity of philosophy. When you stop measuring relationships by shallow metrics of affection and start examining them with the tools of critical thought, by structure, by psychology, by power. The moment you stop seeing love as a fairy tale and start seeing it as a dynamic exchange of forces, you realize how much more complicated and how much more powerful it truly is. Because love, true, raw love, doesn't come wrapped in the pure, pristine fantasy that you've been taught to expect. It's not this untarnished, innocent thing that floats in the air, untouched by time or circumstance. No, love, real love, is a negotiation. It's forged in the fires of past traumas, of unspoken desires, of silent power struggles. It's shaped by histories you didn't script, by instincts you can't fully comprehend, and by dynamics you've never once thought to challenge, until now. And if you're feeling uncomfortable, even unsettled, good. That means you're beginning to wake up. You're peeling back the layers of illusion that have been handed to you. And while the truth isn't easy to swallow, it's the only thing that will truly free you. The truth isn't soft. It doesn't pat you on the back and reassure you. No, it rips away your comfort and transforms you. And once you see it, there's no going back. You can't unlearn what you've learned. You can't unsee the dynamics at play. And once you truly understand how love operates, you can't return to the comforting lie that it's all about pure emotion, pure affection. And that's when the real shift happens. Because once you stop searching for a reflection of yourself in another person, once you stop trying to mold someone else into your ideal, you might finally step into the reality of a relationship. Not one of roles, not one of pretense or masks, but one of equals, of two individuals who see each other clearly, who aren't bound by the chains of false expectations. But until you get there, know this: you are not being loved in the way you think you are. You are being guided, subtly, skillfully, and often silently. And unless you stop confusing attention with truth, unless you stop interpreting your emotional dependence as some kind of virtuous sacrifice, you'll continue to hand over your autonomy, your very sense of self, in exchange for fleeting affection, for the comfort of the illusion. She will accept it, not out of malice, but because she's playing by the rules she never chose. The same rules that taught her to turn power into subtlety, to wield influence without ever appearing to hold it. Because in a world that teaches dominance is dangerous, she found a way to thrive in the shadows, to operate from beneath the surface. It's not cruelty, it's adaptation. It's not manipulation, it's survival. So stop for a moment and turn the gaze back to yourself. Examine the stories you've inherited. Question the myths that have shaped you. Don't ask if she's playing you. Ask if you've ever truly seen her for who she is, not through the lens of desire, but through the lens of truth. Only when you peel away the illusions will you recognize what love really is. Only then will you understand that true connection isn't about dependency, but about equality. And that's when love can stop being a mere comfort and become a catalyst for something far greater, a revolution of understanding power of autonomy.